Is it possible for a single letter to change an industry? Matthew Walzer's letter did. In 2012, his now famous letter written to Nike was opened, read, and responded to, not only with acknowledgement, but with action. Matthew wrote with a request for shoes he could put on by himself. Matthew has cerebral palsy. Now, as a result of his letter, he also has a pair of shoes he can put on with no assistance required.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Matthew.
Hi, Allie. Thank you so much for having me.
Your story is such a powerful one, and one that needs to be seen and heard by so many. If we get right into things, we start out with the fact that there's so much change that's needed to provide accessibility and equality for people with disabilities. And most people don't know where to start, but you did. You started with shoes. Your letter to Nike resulted in the development of the company's first ever hands-free sneaker, Go Fly Ease. Living with CP, what does a shoe you can put on by yourself mean to you?
Well, it means truly the world to me. And I know that it means the world, the universe, the Milky Way, everything for so many people. So to give you a little bit of background about myself, I was born, and people who are listening, I was born 2 months premature, and I was diagnosed with CP at birth. I spent 3.5 months in the NICU, and my CP affects my walking and my balance and my fine motor. And one of the biggest things I struggle with from fine motor is I have pretty good dexterity in my left hand, and my right hand is pretty weak, not so great. And so shoe tying has always been a struggle for me, but pretty much not happening. And so when I was younger, it was something that I learned to kind of accept and live with, that mom and dad had to help me put my shoes on every morning or every time, we left the house. And it was kind of like, okay, it's what it is. But as I got older, I realized that this isn't so great. And, for my own sense of, independence and dignity. And when I was in high school, going into my junior year, I feel like that's kind of the time frame when, that teachers are going to start talking to you about college essays and applications and kind of get that ball rolling. And I knew I wanted to go away to school and live on my own and be as independent as I could. But the only thing stopping me at the time from making sure that that dream was truly feasible was not being able to tie my shoes. And so going into my junior year, right before school started, I was up one night doing some shoe shopping online, looking on Nike and Champs and Foot Locker, and there was nothing available that was accessible, let alone Velcro, anything. I mean, I knew that was going to be the case. I was trying to, I guess, surprise myself and maybe find something, but I knew there wasn't anything. But I'm looking and I'm like, these LeBrons are nice, or these Jordans maybe can, pop in the store and take a look and try them on. But I was thinking, like, what really was gonna truly change? Like, what is really gonna make an impact? If I'm just buying another pair of shoes that my parents are gonna help me put on anyway. And so I thought about it, and I'm like, what? It's 2012, and we can talk to our phones now because Siri was pretty recent on iPhones and stuff. But we don't have shoes that people can put on and make it easy. And so people with disabilities and physical challenges can go about their lives. And so I started drafting this letter on the Notes app. on my iPhone. And from there, I worked at it and tweaked on it, and I wrote this not just because I wanted a pair of shoes so I can go away to college. Yes, that was one of my goals of intent with the letter, but it was also because there are obviously millions of people with disabilities out there that struggle with shoe tying, or even an amputee or disabled veterans and the like. And it can have so many consumers and users. And I wrote to Nike because I knew I've worn Nikes most of my adolescence, and wanted to see if they could help. And they did, and they have, and they continue to bring about so much change and make a difference for people with disabilities, all because of one letter.
It's an incredible letter. I've read through it a couple of different times, and I can't imagine your response when you heard back. How long did it take to hear back from them?
So as far as the going viral and hearing back part, there is a sneaker blog. I'm a huge into sneakers even now, and partly I attribute my sneakerheadness, I think that's a term, a word.
If not, it is now.
To having, I attribute being a sneakerhead, I think that's the right way to put it, to having CP. My family and I would spend hours in shoe stores. We would go into a Foot Locker, a Champs, wherever, and say, hey, bring out all the Nike and Jordan high tops you have in whatever size I was. Not just because I wanted to try on a pair of shoes, but because I had to find something that was supportive enough for my CP. Because one thing people don't realize, and I've gotten this question a few times in some other interviews that I've done, is why sneakers? Why not sandals or loafers or flip flops or whatever? And I said, well, because with CP, most people need supportive shoes for walking. I mean, it literally becomes a safety issue. And so, yeah, I needed a basketball shoe to give me enough support. And not only did I have to find something in the store that was comfortable for me to walk in and had support, but it was a two-way street because it had to be easy enough for my parents to get on my feet. Because literally, there is some physical work involved, especially when you're trying to get, a pair of shoes on your kid that's, I wasn't 5 anymore. I was 14, 15, 16. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't remember your original question. I kind of went on a tangent. I'm sorry.
No worries.
So there is a sneaker blog called Nice Kicks. And when the letter started going viral with the hashtag Nike letter, that I started on Twitter, and my friends got behind it, and it just slowly built and built and built upon itself. And there's a sneaker blog called Nice Kicks. They picked up the letter that it was trending after I posted online, and they did a story on their website. It was called "A High School Student Writes Letter to Nike CEO." And I remember seeing that. I was scrolling through my phone, and I wasn't sure, honestly, if it was about me. And I'm like, did someone else write a letter to them about something else? But I clicked on it, and sure enough, it was me. And then there was a video that was put out on the Nice Kicks YouTube channel from the gentleman that still runs their site, Matt Halfhill. And he said, everyone in the sneaker community, let's get behind Matthew's cause and call to action here, and fill up a bunch of mail trucks with Matthew's letter and mail them off to Beaverton, Oregon. And I'm not sure if all those hard copies, however they were going to do it, of letters ever made it, but it certainly started a little, internet sensation, if you will.
Mhm.
And Nike got wind of it within 3 days of that and called me from, they were at the Olympics in London in 2012. And they said, we love your letter and your call to action. And we're going to work with you on getting you started with, shoes for me to have independence.
Mhm. It's such an incredible story, and I did watch that very video, and as I was watching that video of this gentleman who's saying, hey, look at what Matthew's doing, he wrote this letter, it needs to be read, it needs to be seen. I was struck right then about, not only is the end result of your letter the production of these shoes, but the awareness for even just like fellow sneaker lovers like yourself to say, wow, and you got their attention, and now everyone is becoming more and more aware. So it's had such a big impact on so many. So it's like you started with this letter to Nike.
Yeah.
We're looking for a better design. You continued on from there to work with them. You, in essence, became part of that design as you were involved in the process of what would ultimately result in what we see now with these Go Fly Ease shoes. Um, Tell us what this experience has been like for you. And I mean, being involved in it as much as you have been, and your relationship with Toby Hatfield, perhaps.
Yeah. So to kind of fill in some gaps there. So I collaborated with Toby and his team from 12 to 15 on what would become the original launch of the original Fly-Ease concept with the rear entry zippers and Velcro that you still see on their some of their running and basketball models, and as well as I think in the fall they launched it on a soccer cleat.
Mm.
Um, and so it was a lot of they would send me prototypes. Let me explain kind of where the rear entry concept came from. So I have, aside from dexterity issues, I have a lack of pronation and dorsal, I'm sorry, lack of dorsal flexion and plantar flexion in my feet. I also pronate, and my mind's all over the place. And so it's hard for me to get my foot down into a traditional shoe to make that motion. And so Toby presented me with, hey, we have this concept. It's a rear entry concept where you would slide your foot in and then close up the shoe. And then it's connected by cables, and that's how it stays tight. So that was kind of, they would send me prototypes of those. And I would give them feedback on maybe strengthening up the materials a little bit, how the zippers can be improved, easier to use, maybe get the Velcro strap at the right length to provide enough support. And it was really Nike wanting to understand my needs, as well as, um, the needs of people with disabilities and how they could help. And I didn't work on, let me backtrack a second. So once we were going through prototypes, then I got a call from Nike inviting me out to California to meet Toby in person, because everything we had done was completely through Skype and email and text. So, because they're in Florida, I'm in Oregon. So, we're going to meet Toby for the first time, and flew out there, and they tell me, we're launching the shoes. And I was kind of like, well, what shoes? and they said, well, we're ready to bring this concept of a shoe for everybody to market, this rear entry zipper
Awesome.
concept. And, they wanted me to be a part of the launch.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next day in California, we went out to an airplane hangar in Santa Monica,
Mm-hmm.
where I walked in and there was this Nike basketball academy thing going on. And Toby was there and we met for the very first time in person. And this is a man that truly is responsible for changing my life, but not only my life, but the lives of so many people with disabilities, across the world, truly, with his brilliance in design and innovation. And I also got to meet LeBron James. That was a very special surprise. And once the original Flyers launched in 15, it was just a tremendous response. And I want to show you. So I have this, hang on,
Sure.
collage that I made.
Oh.
And actually of, different moments. This is actually this, I don't know what you can see if, hang on, wait, let me go this way. Okay.
Oh.
So this is the original screenshot of my letter. Something gave me the presence of mind to screenshot it when I started it, because I just had this intuition that this needed to be, I guess, documented right from the start.
Mm-hmm.
These are the original Flyers that launched in 2015, the LeBron Zoom Soldier 8. This is myself, and Toby meeting for the first time. This is the very first pair of shoes that Nike sent me in 2012. They're a pair of Nike Hyperdunk basketball shoes, and they have a zipper up the middle and Velcro straps at the ankles. And it was for the first time in my life at 17, I put my shoes on by myself.
Oh my God.
And it was can you hear me okay?
I can, loud and clear, yeah.
Okay. And it was such an emotional moment for me. I was crying, my family was crying, because when you put your shoes on for the first time, you do it at 4 years old, 3-4 years old. Forgive me if I'm wrong with the age. I didn't do it at the right age. So for me, but to do it at 17 and be 25 was only, 8.5, 9 years ago. It's still very fresh in my mind.
Right.
It's like learning to ride a bike for the first time.
Right.
And now to have that moment and see other people benefit. So many other parents of kids with CP and disabilities benefit. To have college kids reach out to me saying, thanks to Flyers, I can go to college and live my own. And then also, I don't know where you can see this, but so in return, so I actually made Toby this collage and sent it to him. And so when I went out to Nike campus for the first time in 2015, they made me this box, like a commemorative box. It's me and LeBron, and inside are all. This was a hand-painted, handmade box, and inside are all wooden photos scanned of myself, Toby meeting. These are all hand-cut, lasered, leathered. I mean, beautiful.
Wow.
So just
Wow.
And then from there, once it launched and word of Fly's, spread throughout the disabled community. We received, Nike and myself received so many awards. Started with going to the White House first it was the White House. In 2016, the Obama administration put on an event celebrating universal design in fashion, in prosthetics, and all over. And so Nike and I were invited out there just to speak on Flyleaves. And I know we talked earlier, and you mentioned about helping Tommy Adaptive launch their men's line. And so when I was out in DC, people from Tommy Hilfiger were out there as well. And I met Gary Scheinbaum. He's the CEO of PVH, and which is, I think, if I'm correct here, the label that owns Tommy. So Tommy is the subsidiary of PVH, and then I guess I can touch on this now since I'm on the subject. So in like about 9 months later, in June of 17, Tommy asked me to come out to New York. I was in New York for a event from a foundation called Runway of Dreams, who collaborated with Tommy on the initial launch of Tommy Adaptive, and they're a fantastic foundation in their own right, bring about awareness for more accessibility in the fashion industry. And so I was out there for an event with them, and Tommy asked me, "Hey, can you fly back? Can you fly back up to New York?" I don't know. It was like 3 weeks, a month later, because we want you to model for the men's line. And I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." And so just to see what they've done, Nike and Tommy Hilfiger are truly, to my knowledge, some of the first mainstream everyday brands that you pick off their logos like that.
Yeah.
That have stepped into the adaptive space and brought about so much positive change.
That's incredible. Like it's just amazing. And again, I mean, what can happen with a letter, and where you can go from there, and people you can reach, and you mentioned that the millions of people around the world who will now be able to wear put on a shoe on their own. I mean, we take it for granted. And I think with your letter, with what you've done, not only are you helping those particular individuals, but everyone, people like myself. I mean, and I will admit, I never really thought about, oh yeah, that's probably a difficult thing to do. Yeah. Because if you're not faced with that adversity, you just don't know. You don't think to know. You don't know what you don't know.
You just don't know. And I didn't personally. I did not work on the Fly Ease Go shoe. My collaboration with Nike was the original Fly Ease rear entry zipper and Velcro. But now to see that and see how much momentum this is giving, Nike's innovation, as well as the opportunities and possibilities for the disabled community to have more and more accessible footwear. Now it's on a completely different level. I mean, Nike, the bar was here, right? And Nike, took it to here.
Right.
And in my letter, I have a copy because I have to reference it a lot lately. I said, a basketball and running shoe with a closure system that can be used by everybody. And I didn't have the exact vision per se of what that would look like, but I visualized that it could be possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so now you have a shoe that I'm just being honest here, you don't really need hands to put it on,
Right.
which just opens up so many more possibilities. I mean, you could have the least amount of dexterity, an amputee situation, missing limbs, what have you. And now, because of this new design from Nike, it just opens up so many more doors.
Yeah, absolutely it does. Going back for a moment to Tommy Hilfiger, what was it about their line that you would like to see other designers doing? Can you name just a couple of things that we just don't think about normally?
I mean, to be honest with you, I mean, they have magnets on bottoms, so shorts and pants, which something for my dexterity, especially with pants. Getting dressed up, which I'm not doing as much these days. But it's been sweat shorts for like, I don't know, a year. but
Right.
but magnets on magnet closures and easy on and off dress shirts with magnetic buttons. But really, aside from, it's not just about what Tommy's doing that I would like to see other brands do. I want to see other brands do it in general.
Right.
You know?
Right.
You can in this instance, you can never have too many players in the game. And so why isn't Polo doing an adaptive line? Why but I will say that clothing and shoes as a whole are the two industries that have taken the lead. And now we need to see more universal design, not just in clothing, but in everywhere, in our infrastructure, in on our roads and sidewalks. I mean, I know New York City is its own beast per se, but when I was out in New York, it's kind of shocking. I guess I'm a Florida guy, so we don't have basements, and there's not steps everywhere, and there's not a basement inside of our Dick's Sporting Goods.
Right.
But just to like go and you say, okay, this street corner has a ramp, but the street you're crossing doesn't have a ramp and there's a curb, and I'm in a wheelchair, and it's like, okay, this is which I get it. It's New York. It's its own beast. But on a, I guess maybe a more practical scale, like something that I would like to see, an industry that I would like to see take on universal design, is in cars and transportation. I mean, for people that don't realize, getting a car when you have a disability and you need modifications on that car, really any type of modification, it's not like going into your Ford dealer, Toyota, Lexus, wherever, and saying, hi, I want to buy the new Explorer or Camry or whatever, and I want the entertainment package with the sunroof, and I'll take it in black.
Right.
And let's work out a lease. I need this van because I do have a handicap van. I'm gonna take this van, buy it, work all that out, and then you have to go take it to a third-party company, and there's only so many third-party companies that do this. And in my particular case, I have, my van has a ramp that comes out. I use a scooter wheelchair to get around, and so I need a van with a ramp. And this third-party company, they're all the way out on the other side on the west coast of the country. And so they ship your car out, and they make all these modifications, cut the floor, take seats out, the whole night, and it can take 6 months to get it all done and back to you, just because of the demand.
Yeah.
But there just isn't enough. And but it makes me wonder, like, why aren't car companies just offering models that not every car is going to be ready to go off the showroom floor, but why do we have to go to a third party? And it gets expensive too, and it's like you're being penalized for being able to drive. So it's like if there were a universally designed vehicle that, obviously the person could pick and choose what modifications they need and don't need, but if there was a car that the car itself was designed with a wheelchair user in mind from the beginning, and not, well, it can be converted,
Right.
then.
Yeah, or now that I'm thinking about it, I mean, at the very least, to at least offer a package, like, the entertainment package, this package, like, at least to offer it, as opposed to having to rely on, a third party. And yeah, it seems like this is something that should be happening, that should have happened already some time ago, probably.
Yeah, and I mean, aside from um, the adaptations to the car, I mean, you look at like self-driving cars, and what all the big car companies are doing. GM's trying to do it. You hear rumors that Apple and Google are trying to do it. But obviously Tesla is the front runner in self-driving car technology. But what people might not realize, that are sitting there working on these vehicles and this software, is this isn't just like to be like the cool new thing. Like, there's real application here for people with disabilities that may be physically incapable of driving. I mean, personally, I'm blind in my left eye. And so I can't drive at night because I have depth perception issues.
Right.
And it's a safety thing, and it's not something I'm going to go like test out. You know what I mean? I already,
Right.
I did that in college, and I was fine, but it just never, kind of like a never again thing.
Right.
And so, but there's such an application for it for people with disabilities, and that's what people aren't getting. Like, if there were more departments across all companies, not just a few in the fashion industry.
Yeah.
But, we all use products every day. So, but until you get feedback from people and work with people and have people working for you that live it every day, your product isn't going to meet its potential.
Right. No, it's a really good point. And that leads me actually to my next question, in that, outside of clothing, what you wear, like what you use, what are the main products that you can think of that are just like, man, why can't they just do this differently? What are the most frustrating products? I mean,
where do I begin? I mean, we talked about cars. I mean, even as something as simple as a shampoo bottle. Like, you go out and you buy shampoo, and you're in the shower, and like you're trying to open it, and the tops are different. And it's like, why is this so complicated? And I mean, you talk about boxes of cereal, and I a few weeks ago I was trying to get myself breakfast, and it was a new box of, I think, Cinnamon Toast Crunch or something, Captain Crunch, and I open up the box, and you have the plastic bag, right? And they're sealed, they're vacuum sealed, they're not like a Ziploc. So I'm trying to pull it to get it open, and it actually ripped open from the side, and like a quarter of the bag flew out all over the counter. And I'm just like, and it's like, why? I'm trying to get myself a bowl of cereal, and it's just like, why?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And it does. I mean, it's a very good question when we look at all these products and the advancements that we get on top of advancements. Why are these just basic sort of things not addressed? And why aren't those made a priority?
And it's not, and disabled people, the disabled community, are like, we're ready, and we're awake, and we need more companies to understand that, and like think outside the box, think outside the cereal box, think outside of what like, think of what you're doing, and how, what other end users could benefit, because most companies don't design with universal design in mind, but think about what the word universal means. It can be used by everybody. And we have to speak out and not settle for what the status quo is. And it goes back to my letter. As I said earlier, I put my own shoes on for the first time at 17, but I didn't know if that moment was going to happen at 17 or 30 or 50. I mean, I'm sitting there as a kid, I'm thinking, well, one day, someone's going to do something. Maybe Nike's going to, but I knew it was a chance that I needed to take, because I needed to make sure that I spoke up.
Well, so happy that you did. So, I want to switch gears to your website.
Yes.
Last year, you wrote a blog post entitled Together.
Yeah.
On your site, which is entitled Against All Odds,
Yeah.
with the named because of the book that your parents made for you. Now you spoke
Thank you for doing your homework. I appreciate it.
Matthew, we appreciate you. These are the reasons that we tell these stories. Your story needs to be heard and seen. In this particular post, you spoke about how we're all in this together and how we're all in the same team.
Yeah.
And I want to reference this particular quote. You said, all of us play most of the same games in life, but people with disabilities typically have a much longer road to the title, making victory, I love this part, so much sweeter. So we're just curious. Jack and I were like, oh, I wonder how he's going to answer this. We're very curious to know. To date, what is your sweetest personal victory, Matthew?
Well, I think, honestly, it was spending the first time I ever spent a night by myself, alone, independently, was college freshman year orientation. And it was because of Nike, with having shoes that I could put on myself. And I was like a freaking nervous wreck. I was trying, orientation was a 2-day thing. Everybody's parents go with them. My dad was with me, but at night, they do have like activities, did like a pool party thing. And then it's like, all right, everyone, you get assigned a dorm. And ironically, the dorm that they gave me is the dorm that I lived in all 4 years. I'll get to that in a second. But, so I'm like, all right, here I am in my room, and I have my bag of clothes, and the school, FGCU, was nice enough to kind of set up the room with a couple little things to just make it a little bit easier for me. And I'm like, all right, here I am. And I remember a funny story, and I haven't really shared this with too many people, but so it was a roll-in shower in the room, because it was an accessible room. But because the shower itself was like extra long, like this way, the width, I guess, looking out, they didn't have a shower curtain on the shower. And so I took a shower without a shower curtain. And so I'm like, I'm gonna flood the bathroom, because it's all one level.
Right.
So I remember, and so it was, it was like, but I'm like, all right, like this is what, again, like this is what, as a person with a disability, like obviously I'm gonna take a shower, but like no one thought, gee, like can we do a makeshift shower curtain, something like it, you know what I'm saying? Like no one thought about with the other person, how the person that's actually using that shower that night would go about not flooding a bathroom.
Right. Right.
And so, but yeah, that like orientation in itself, getting through that first night, that wasn't like the personal victory, but it was the stepping stone to, what I consider my biggest personal overall victory of going to college and, getting my degree. And because of the shoes gave me the peace of mind to live on my own, there was some things along the way that I needed to, that I worked with the school on to just make it a little easier for me getting in and out of my dorm, and transportation, and the gym. I would go to the gym a lot, school gym, and for the longest time there wasn't a push button for so if someone was in a wheelchair, it was coming, the door would open automatically.
Uh-huh.
And but they had a personal training program there for people with disabilities.
Mm-hmm.
So which I took part in, but I'm like, why can't I get in? And so and eventually they did it, and it was because I was the one that said something.
Right, right.
Um, but yeah, so it's been the biggest overall thing is again to just speak up.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been told from the school with certain things. Well, we've had no one's ever said anything before. It's like, well, okay, I'm saying something.
I'm
you
saying
know.
something right now.
So I taught, it was a big learning experience that you have to speak up if you want to change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, it's excellent advice. And that's, again, if any actions for positive change come, it's because people are first made aware, and so it's stories like yours, sharing these sorts of things that
Yeah.
make all of us aware.
Yeah.
We know that there's many minority groups that suffer from inequality. Matthew is a member of the largest minority group in the world, which you also pointed out in your podcast that I listened to. People with disabilities, what is the biggest barrier we as a society need to overcome?
Well, I think that to start off, disability doesn't discriminate.
Mm-hmm.
Think about it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what your skin color is, your gender, your religion, your orientation, and that's what people fail to realize is that um, disability does not discriminate, but also disability never goes out of style, meaning that there's there are things like CP, for example, that there are some great treatments and surgeries and physical therapy and things of that nature, but there's no magic button, there's no magic pill. And so like it or not, here we are.
Mm-hmm.
And people with disabilities can't be afraid to speak up and make sure that their voices are heard. And forgive me if it doesn't exactly answer your question. I just have a lot of good thoughts in my head right now, but
Bring them.
I lost my train of thought. Can you just repeat the question one more time? I apologize.
Do not apologize, please. No, my question was, what is the biggest barrier we as a society need to overcome?
I think just listening and realizing that there's so much good that comes out of making sure everybody's included. And it's like, why, why wouldn't you want to have you or me or Jack or whoever, my friends and family, want to have a shoe that everybody can use? Why wouldn't you want to have a car that's easy enough to get in and out of, or just streets that are designed to be navigated easier? We always have to adapt our environment to everybody else. Like, everyone else is forced to we're forced to work around what's already there.
Mm-hmm.
But people need to start adapting their environment to us.
Yes.
And thinking and think about people with disabilities first and foremost.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so, part two of that question was, what does a world of inclusion look like? And based on what you've shared already, I'm already seeing like the way streets should look, the way showers should like.
Yeah, I mean, I can probably pick out every single thing that's in my room right now and tweak something about it. I mean, it's endless, and you could drive yourself mad thinking about it, you know? But what inclusion should look like is people understanding what we go through, and how far we've come. Like, I don't know if you or Jack have seen the documentary on Netflix. It's called Crip Camp.
No.
The Obamas produced it, and it's about when you watch the trailer and you look at the poster for it, you think it's about a hippie camp in upstate New York that in the 60s and 70s that was kind of the only game in town as far as a summer camp for people with disabilities, because that's what I thought going into it, because they kind of the real reason is kind of underlying, but it really goes on to talk about the people that I'm sorry if I'm spoiling this for anyone that's watched it, but that hasn't watched it, but people that went to this camp kind of grew up together. Even if they lived in different parts of the country, they would come together every summer and reconnect and share their experiences, because no one else gave a shit. Excuse me. And no one else gave a shit aside from the people that went to this camp and the people that volunteered and ran the camp, because they cared, because society was so different back then, even than it is now. And so, but the people in this camp went on to be the forerunners in the civil rights movement for people with disabilities, which was a story up until 3.5 weeks ago. I never knew that there was such an amazing story behind this. And it should be told along with the other beautiful civil rights movements and stories and history that we have in this country. Giving women the right to vote, civil rights, everything. But why are people with disabilities, we're still under the table, in my opinion, in the public domain, as a minority that's discussed and advocated for.
Yeah, no, and you're right. And I think there has to be this shift in mindset, as opposed to, there's been references, is it handicap accessible and these kinds of things, but really we should be thinking of it is this universally designed? Does this adhere to
and more so from design, and something that is always kind of a sticking point with me personally, is equal, more so honestly, the personal experience. And what I mean by that is how people on the outside perceive people with disabilities, whether it's myself, another individual with CP, someone with autism, Down syndrome, Asperger's, what have you, and how they perceive how we communicate, what our limitations are just by looking at us. I mean, I haven't gone out really to restaurants at all since COVID, but when I would go, let's say after work, and go get myself something to eat. I have my own car, and I'd get out. Sometimes I would just go into a restaurant by myself as a party of one. Like, if I'm busy after work and I have to run errands and go get something to eat, I will. Like, it's not a big deal to me. And I go into a restaurant and I kind of smirk, because you see all the people turn, right? And like, okay, what is this kid in this scooter doing in this restaurant by himself? Like, you can tell just by reading people's expressions that that's what people are thinking. Like, is he lost? You know what I'm saying? It's like to them, it's so out of place to see someone with a disability go out on their own and even go get a bite at a restaurant. And I've had experiences where um, I asked for a check, and the woman came to clear my table, and she congratulated me on eating all my food.
What?
And this wasn't that long ago. This was like, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years ago. So I mean, I'm like a young guy in my 20s, and I like it didn't even register for a second of what she was implying. But then I thought about it, and I'm thinking are you kidding me?
Wow.
And it just goes to show what we have to go through,
Yeah.
and the lack of knowledge that people still don't have about what people with disabilities can achieve. I mean, and I don't just want just myself to be a example or the example, but I think it's a good starting point that a person with cerebral palsy who um, doctors said that told my parents that I would never walk, and if I talk, I'd have an tremendous speech impediment. Um, Obviously, none of that, all of those things proved to be false. Here I am talking to you for almost a half an hour now, or I don't even know how long.
Doesn't
And
matter.
and I've gone on to collaborate with Nike on a shoe, and hopefully for me this is just the beginning. There's so much more I want to achieve across all areas, working with more companies across more sectors and industries, and even there's things within our own government to make sure that we're being represented, and it's like, yeah, we have the ADA, which is fantastic. A lot of our world will look very different without it.
Yeah.
So you can't discount that. But what about making sure that um, even though it's one size, even though it was written in my belief, and I'm speaking off of personal experience here, it was written where doorways are such and such wide, and ramps are like this, but what if the person needs a little more, and especially goes back to schools and universities, and it's kind of like the bare minimum. I couldn't get in and out of my dorm when I first got to FGCU. The door would close on my scooter. It was too heavy because it was a fire door.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, how am I going to leave to go to class every day? I didn't have a roommate because I didn't feel comfortable with asking a complete stranger, because most freshmen do random roommates unless you know somebody. Hey, guy I just met last night, can you help me? Do you mind taking out the garbage or something? Because I can't do it. And yeah, I can't take out the garbage. I figured that out. But I'm saying it's like, hey, you don't know how the person's going to react
Right.
to you.
Right.
And so here I was, like, I couldn't even get out of my own dorm. And originally, they said, well, maybe call some down. The freshman buildings had a front desk, so they were like, maybe call down the desk and see if you can get someone to help you, open the door for you. And I'm thinking we're talking about to get out of my own dorm room, and I'm like, okay. And I was like, well, what if I forget something,